Hello! In this clip from our Justia webinar, Charisma in Person and on LinkedIn, Business Development for Attorneys, Scott Mason and Mark Halpert answer the audience's questions and give their final opinions on charisma. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Thank you both for that lovely presentation, and we can now move on to audience questions, as Mark said. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them through that Q&A button at the control panel at the bottom of your screen. It looks like we already have one, so we can get started with that. The first one is, can you give me an example of how I can easily showcase my charisma in an initial consultation with a client?
I think that one is directed at me, and so I'll take the lead on answering that. Yes, I can. First of all, above and beyond all else, make sure that you are, as you're listening to what they say, conveying facial expressions and body language that shows that you're listening. That includes not just listening, but reacting, making sure that those reactions are expressed. Really leaning forward, backwards, eyebrows, all of those sorts of things. And then if you are able to not interrupt, but to be able to verbalize some expressions, things like, oh my, ask questions indicating that you were listening, not just to whatever they said, but going back to things that they might have said earlier. Or if you can tie a couple of things together. 5 minutes ago, you said XYZ. I see a common thread between that and the remark that you just made. Can you maybe explain how those two things played out? Not just basic questions like what happened next to get them to just talk more, but that show that you're engaged with them, show that you are having an emotional and an intellectual response. And then as you process and push forward those questions or your responses, try and make sure that they are containing a message that ultimately drives the conversation to what you want that call to action to be. Now, that sounds like it's a lot, but it's actually very doable for lawyers in particular, because we are used to processing complex, detailed information and then being able to put it into various different buckets for expression. But it does take practice on an interpersonal level. But it's within the skill set of every single person on this call.
And just to add to that, if you do this in the LinkedIn messaging service, you get all those threads together and they're all available to you, so you can refer back up to a comment that somebody else made before and revisit it later to be sure that you were clear and that you answered the question. And you ask, we did this yesterday. Somebody asked a question, he answered it. I didn't think that answer was exactly right. So I poked in and I said, can you give us one really great example of that so we all can learn from you? And that became a learning opportunity.
I'll just throw one final thing into the response here. If you have a big personality like I do, thinking about how introverts can be charismatic, going back to that slide earlier, can be of enormous help to you in a one-on-one consultation environment. Sort of using the techniques that introverts have interpersonally is of enormous value, because a huge personality in an initial client consultation can actually undermine trust.
Awesome. Thank you guys for those tips. We have time for a couple more. So the next one is, what specific behaviors should I focus on to create lasting impressions that build authentic connections with other legal professionals?
I'll start with that. And there's one word above and beyond everything else. That word is care. Too many of us in law, and again, I say this as someone who was guilty of it, have achieved levels of success because we have performed and had or done things in our history that impress other people. And so we can become habituated to being impressive and have that as a substitute for the ability to make a real connection No one feels connected to you because they're impressed with you. No one feels connected with you because of the knowledge that you have. Everyone will feel connected with you if they believe that you genuinely care. That above and beyond anything else is my one-word answer to that question.
Nothing to add. Perfectly said.
Awesome. Okay. And then you guys touched on some of these differences just between your two presentations. But our next question is, do you think the approach to using charisma is different or similar from going online to in person? And how would you best bridge that gap?
I'll jump on that one. And that is in my presentation, I made the comment that if somebody reads your profile and gets a feeling that they like what they see, and then they call you or they Zoom with you, and it's different, you've lost the battle. You've lost their interest. So you have to be consistent. You have to be comfortable with who you are and what you have to offer. You have your own way of expressing yourself, and you will use the right expressions in both your written and your oral conversation. And especially if they're asking you for advice, you know what you can and cannot say. Again, ethics come into this, and again, just good professional habits come into this.
In a live context, you will be almost subconsciously, or maybe consciously, if this is something you're choosing to practice because it doesn't come first nature to you, but focusing on the individual reactions of the people in front of you. How is that audience? Are they falling asleep when you're talking? Are they awake? Are they leaning back away from you, or are they leaning in to hear more? You will want to focus on moving around as is appropriate, as well as standing still when is appropriate. All of these are live techniques that you can't effectively use online. So when it comes to conveying charisma online, above and beyond all else, focus on the camera. Focus on the camera. Focus on the camera. Here are 2 tips that can help you with that. Number 1, imagine that someone that you're attempting to communicate with, the avatar for whoever it is, or maybe someone on the call, I might now be imagining Nina, for instance, is standing right behind that camera. Speak to her or him as if they are there. The audience will read your reaction that way. Number 2, this is a really practical tip that I have learned as a 4-time podcaster. It works. When you're talking in a Zoom room or another virtual call, pull out the window that you are speaking in from anything else that you have open. Then shrink down the size of that window as small as you can and still be able to see it. Then place the entire window directly under your camera, so that even if you feel the need to look down every now and then, it will still appear to those who are listening or watching that you're looking at them. The camera can't detect that sort of difference in your eye placement. If you do that, you will automatically create the illusion that you're speaking to the person who is on the camera. I look at YouTube podcasts all the time, and you see the host like looking down. You can tell they're looking at the person beneath them on the Zoom screen. That camera is everything. And so that's a little tip that you can use to help get away from that habit that will really hurt your charisma online.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for your insight and your wonderful presentation. And thank you all for your questions. We're almost out of time today, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Give me 1 moment here. Okay, so just as I mentioned, I wanted to thank you all for joining us for another Justia webinar. And as I touched on briefly at the beginning of our webinar today, I did want to remind you all of that great place to showcase yourself well online, maybe use some of those tactics that Mark and Scott touched on today with your Justia Lawyer Directory profile. Your profile on the Justia Lawyer Directory helps you connect with clients fast. And if you make sure your profile is as complete as possible and has a great photo, you're all the more likely to connect with those clients. And if you'd like to take it a step further and sign up for Justia Premium Placements, you can feature yourself in the directory listing page above those free organic listings. So to learn more about that, you can always go to marketing.justia.com. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next clip.